Hey, what's up, Grace Family Church? Welcome back to the Pastor's Hangover. And as you guys know, this summer, we are dealing with some different topics, some topics that a lot of times we may not talk about, but some topics that we absolutely should talk about. And so today, we are talking about the topic of porn and the addiction that goes along with it. And I am excited about who I have with us today. We've got, to my right, we've got Mason Kane. And then we've got Frank Rich next to him. And then we have, and Daryl's here too.
You know me.
But Pastor Daryl's here. And if you didn't know this, if you're watching on the Spotify or whatever that may be, this is a all facial hair group today.
You guys made it mandatory. We grew it out before
you
we
have
came.
to. Yeah, we said you got to have at least a mustache or a beard going on today in order to talk about this topic. But really one of the big things that we're going to be doing today is kind of reframing the idea of pornography and getting this understanding. But I want to start off with these guys kind of introducing themselves and why they got into this, because I doubt your counselor in school was like, hey, I think what you should go into is helping guys get out of pornography. It's probably not what you immediately went into, but we'll start off with Mason here. Like, what is the reason, what drew you into this, and like what's kind of your story in that?
Yeah, I think what I've noticed throughout my life is like a lot of times God leads you to your purpose through your pain.
Yeah.
And this is the most painful thing in my life for the majority of my life. It started around actually 5 years old as I discovered going through therapy. I thought it was 10. 5 years old was my first sexual memory where I felt shame around it. Leading into 10, I discovered pornography for the first time. And that gave all of these like curiosities and almost gave an outlet for my shame and my curiosity. And it started to take a life of its own. Going through, middle school, being baptized at 15 was one of the things I was like, I got to give this to God. I'm going to be baptized. This is all going to be washed away. And then my relationship with God started to get rocky when I realized that it wasn't, and I was still battling it. This went through my marriage, keeping it a secret. At that point, I just believed that this was my cross to carry. This is something I was going to struggle with for my whole life. I just kind of accepted it. And it was like, no matter what I did from an external circumstance, like I accomplished things from a success standpoint, accomplished things from a marriage standpoint, from a fitness, like I had this low level of misery that I always existed in, which led to a point in my life where I was like, if this is what life is going to be like for the rest of my life, like I don't want to live another day, and brought me to my knees in that regard. Also a lot of pain in going through and trying to find help. I went to multiple different intensives flying across the country, multiple different counselors, therapists, all these things. And I was having to piecemeal all of these things along. And so when I finally started seeing success, I looked back on the journey that I'd been through and like saw so much pain, so many things that were just out of alignment and like could be done better. And God just like the clearest that I've ever heard God talk to me was like, the reason that I allowed you to endure that pain at such a deep level for so long is so that you can resonate with the guys that are going through it right now, possibly in secret, and help them find a path out.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was the most painful thing. I understand the guy that's deep stuck in it.
Yeah.
And that's where my heart's at.
Good.
That's powerful. Yeah. And parents, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the average age a kid sees pornography is between 8 and 11.
Yeah.
And so it is a conversation that we have to have early. But I think most guys are living it in secret.
Yeah.
And so that is very true. But Frank, what about you?
Yeah, very similar to Mason's story. It was a very early introduction to guilt and shame and secrecy in my life. I was 6 years old, and I remember finding it in my dad's sock drawer. And, curious, didn't know what it meant. I know it made me feel a certain type of way, but it was dad's, right? And it was a secret that he was holding. So I think that shaped my relationship with both porn and with sex. It's like, okay, it's going to make you feel shameful, but you can keep it a secret and nobody will ever know. I think the one thing that's maybe a little bit different with Mason and my story, and I think all the guys out there are struggling, there's so many common themes, is I didn't have that relationship with God growing up. I came to my faith very late in life. I was 35 years old. I struggled through my 20s and 30s, despite having success in bodybuilding and business. With drugs, alcohol, I felt like I was able to conquer those things, but this was one thing that nobody talked about. Through the early 2000s, like these conversations weren't regular in the church or in the social place, right? So it was always something that I carried a lot of guilt and shame around. Coming to my faith in late 2018, getting surrounded with some incredibly strong Christian leaders and men exposed a lot of lies that I was believing about myself. And there was a very pivotal moment in February of 2019 where I opened up for the first time. And I think talking about it with people that I trusted and feeling safe and comfortable in that environment showed me that when you walk in truth and you expose the secrets, that's where real freedom is going to be found. So that was a catalyst for me of really just sharing my story. I was somewhat of an online persona. I had a public following. I was running a fitness company, and I started a podcast because I said, if I had struggled with all these things despite having conquered personal development, conquered fitness, conquered business, what about the other guys out there that maybe aren't chasing some of these things? Can they benefit from hearing my story? So putting it out in the public sphere, having it accepted, and then having guys reach out to me, I think I felt that call from God at that time. Okay, I took you through this journey. These people are seeking your help. Here's your opportunity to really take what you went through and have a massive impact in the world. And that was kind of the creation of all the work that we've done for the last 6 years. But it was years of shame, mental health, depression, anxiety, all wrapped up. And that first step into freedom was that first conversation and exposing the truth. And that's what we've tried to create in our communities and our environments, and still why I continue to share that story, because it still brings healing to me. And it's given me an incredible life and been able to create massive change with the guys that we work with. So very similar, but some different parts, I think.
Well, and I'll say that's the reason why the two of you are on is because you work with this. And so often I feel like in the church, even if we do bring it up, we don't always have that next step or that intense next step, because I think a lot of times we lessen the impact of what it is. I still remember the very first time I saw something was in 6th grade. And my friend just went up to me at the bus stop and went like this, like literally showed me a picture. And I was like, that's not at all what I thought everything was going to like. It was just, I was kind of thrown, but at the same time, there was that side of like, I want to see it again. I don't know what to do with this. And so, which leads into that shame and guilt cycle over and over again. And so it is a tough dynamic. What about you, Daryl?
Yeah, I was 11 actually first time, and it was weird, and but there was something, even seeing at 11 years old, you go, oh, this is wrong. Like no one said anything, but I was just like, oh, this is wrong. It was at my neighbor's, my next door across the street, and we were playing around in their house, and I ended up in the closet, and there were boxes in there, and I just started opening up boxes, and I was like, yo, and immediately this is like, I'm not supposed to be here. This isn't right. And so before we move forward, I think there are some people who are not honest about the impact that this has. And so I think you might have some statistics, and I've got a couple here too, of just people don't realize that there are 40 million Americans that go to porn sites regularly. 40 million. They visit it every day.
They're the most trafficked sites on the internet.
It's more than Amazon and some like it's massive. Like it's like people. That's a crazy thing to think about because I go to Amazon a lot. Like it is by far. It's not a small dynamic.
No, and I read the stat, and it says neuroscience shows that porn alters the brain similarly to drugs. Dopamine spikes, desensitization, desensitization and rewiring of sexual expectations. And so it is as harmful, if not more harmful, than doing drugs.
It is.
And so it's an epidemic. And for something to start at 8 through 11 years old, you were saying 6 years old, 5 years old, that you're experiencing this for the first time, that is a lot of weight and burden to have on our children, which is why it's a conversation we need to start having earlier. And so later on, I want to hear from you guys how in a home, how would you start having these conversations with your boys and your girls at 5 and 6 years old? Because unlike when we were kids, they're getting information so much faster and so much easier. You can even lock certain things on the phone and they'll find a workaround. And so what is the conversation that you guys have had? Because you're doing it regularly. I know what we've had in our home, but what are those conversations would be? So we can circle back to that.
And it is. It's porn gets more views than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined, or X combined. And so like it's 85% of guys and approximately 50% of girls, especially in Gen Z. It's probably actually higher now, but regularly look at these things. And so it is. And it's easy to get and it's easy to mask. because like if you shoot up heroin, everyone knows.
Yeah.
If you just watch porn, no one knows.
Right.
Well, that and then
so,
it's always accessible, right? So it's like trying to quit alcohol with a bottle in your pocket all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Well, they say
always
it's
attached.
the big 3 A's. So it's the affordability,
Yep.
the accessibility, and then the anonymity. Right? It's free online. You know, you don't have to pay to get it. If you're struggling with drugs or alcohol, like you're gonna have to hustle a little bit to get your fix. Here you can go to a simple site like X. You only have to go to the streaming sites and have it readily available. And then you have accessibility. It's in your pocket everywhere you go. And then it's completely done in anonymity, right? A young boy can be sitting in his room with his smartphone. Parents think it's harmless, or a grown man can be sitting at his work desk, taking a bathroom break, and nobody's going to know. It doesn't, you don't have a porn breath. You don't have porn eyes. You know, maybe there's a glassy fog to you, but most people aren't going to be able to see that.
Absolutely. So, and that's the tough part of it is a lot of times people don't recognize the issue until it gets bad enough. And so it's something that you've got to talk about early on. And it's one of those things too, where most of the times I would say this, people are like, I'm not addicted to it. I only look at it every once in a while or once a month. And what's interesting is I'm a nerd a little bit out on you guys. There's something in the brain called delta phos-B that creates the long-term pathways. It works for about a month. So if you only look at it once a month, you are literally creating a deeper and deeper channel into this is my reaction. And so and in that's what I wanted to do. I was like, I want us to reframe this idea of what the addiction looks like, but really why it's different than other addictions, because it's not the same. And it's very different. And like we treat it very differently. Whereas someone with porn, especially in the church, we would go, how dare you do that? But if you have an alcohol addiction, we're like, oh, let's get you an Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, oh, there's something behind that. With porn, we're like, oh, this is just a choice you're making. That's false in this. And so you guys in this conversation, when we're talking about porn, what are some of the things that you're like, we got to change the mindset on this, or we've got to change the questions that we're asking about this when it comes to porn?
I think like one of the pivotal shifts that most guys have is they start to gain awareness on the patterns of when this shows up, right? And so from a spiritual perspective, a lot of times it's like the initial thought is, well, I have a lust problem. Like I'm just, hypersexualized, or maybe I have a abnormally high sex drive and I have a lust problem. But when you start to really gain awareness of like when you start to go back to this mechanism, you realize that you have a pain problem, right? And you start recognizing these patterns of, hey, like when I get in an argument with my wife and I feel rejected and I feel unworthy, right? I start to medicate with porn, right? When work gets really stressful and I feel inadequate to do the job that I have or provide for my family or whatever it may be, I find myself going to porn to escape. And then what starts to get really interesting is you start to notice that it's not just when work goes bad, but then when things go exceptionally well, you start to get this desire to go back to porn as well. And so like you've developed this relationship with it from a psychological standpoint. And that goes well beyond just a lust problem. And that's where we start to get into like, hey, what's actually going on here? Do I just have a lustful eye? Or is there actually a deeply rooted addiction that started to form in childhood?
So it's a symptom. Porn is not the problem.
It is a symptom.
It's a symptom. And so to that, I had identity, intimacy, trauma, and I mean, all of those can be in those pain categories if you don't identify them right. But yeah, that's good in your low and in your high.
Well, that would be the identity piece that he spoke to, right? When things begin to go really, really well. If you're struggling with this and you're riddled with guilt and shame, you're going to self-sabotage, right? This is where that word is going to show up because I'm not worthy of that. This is who I really am, and people don't know this. I wear this mask, so I can't achieve these things because I know who I am behind closed doors. So the identity plays into a self-sabotage. And then, we've analyzed thousands of pieces of data. It's like emotional and financial stress are like the two biggest drivers of that need to escape. Like it becomes a tool of emotional regulation as opposed to like actually a desire for sexual connection. And I think that's a big reframe for people.
It's an addiction. That's the thing. Like we have to stop treating it as something that we accidentally do to the fact like it's an addiction. It's like alcohol. It's like drugs. It's those things. And if we don't get to the root of it, and I mean, it's like any other addiction. We'll pick up another addiction to deal with it. And that's the thing is like, I'm dealing with my porn problem, but I picked up this. And so that's what we're trying to help people understand is we cannot continue to treat this as just something else.
Can I speak to that word really quick? Like as we dive into the word addiction, speaking from personal experience, when I was struggling with porn or had a porn problem, when people would start to throw the label of, no, you're dealing with an addiction, you have an addiction, there was this pride that dwelled up within me that was like, no, like I have a porn problem, but I'm not an addict. I don't need to sit in a group and go, hi, my name's Mason, I have a porn addiction, right? And one of the things that I want to speak to is you may be experiencing the symptoms of an addiction, of like what humans have defined as an addiction, but at your core level, you are not an addict.
Yes.
And I think when people started telling me like, hey, you have an addiction, I'm like, but I'm not an addict, right? Because that's not the identity that God created me to be. He didn't create an addict, right? And so like anybody, as we're having this conversation, maybe the listener feels some resistance. Like we're just talking about you're exhibiting symptoms of something. You are not an addict at your identity level.
Yeah. And that's an important part, because you spoke of replacing it, right? I think everybody is familiar with 12 steps in the addiction community. What a lot of people don't know is Bill W., the founder, overcame his alcohol addiction and became a sex addict because he held on to that identity. So I think that's probably something that you've really positioned yourself as, and something we've really tried to do as well, is like, we're not going to make you every day raise your hand and say, I'm an addict. Like, recognize it, truth from the beginning, but then let's create a new identity, the identity that man, that God is calling you to be, that man. So that addiction identity can keep guys stuck.
Can I speak to the 12-step thing real quick?
Yeah, please.
So since you brought it up, like 12 steps was originally did in 1935, right? And I don't have anything against AA or anything like that. Like I've seen it do some great work, but I also think that we're entering a season from a psychology level where like there's a reformation going on of like how we're addressing this, right? And it's important to understand in 1935, like psychologists were still prescribing electroshock therapy, right? And so we're going back to like archaic practices.
It worked for me.
It worked for you. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. So like there's a different way to approach this.
Make you be able to sing? Because then
that's why
that's your voice.
So well. That's the voice. That's electrical voice,
up, man.
Electrical voice coming out.
Sorry.
Yeah. So there's a different way to approach it than, and again, like some things that I would say at the 12-step process is, hey, I'm Mason, I'm an addict, right? Like if I were to pick one thing and just caution people of is like, that's not a good practice to root your identity in, right?
No.
And we're seeing this shift in psychology, especially the way that we're addressing addiction, that for the first time in way too long, we're starting to reframe the way that we're looking at this. And it's not sitting in a group and going, I'm an addict every week. We identify that as bondage swapping, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, I'm chained to a pornography addiction over here. I have that chain around my neck. It's pulling me this way. And so what I'm going to do to combat that is I'm going to take another chain, I'm going to put it around my neck, and I'm going to chain myself to groups for life, right? I'm not acting out on behavior, but am I unchained? No, you're actually chained in both directions. So you're sitting here in the midst of temptation tormenting you, right? So you're tormented when you give into it, and then you're also tormented by being pulled this way to trying to resist it, right? So you're not truly living in the freedom that Christ designed for us and set us a path for us to achieve.
Yeah. And we're dealing with a modern drug that is 2 decades old at best when it comes to the internet streaming. I mean, I talked about 6 years old, and I think your story was of magazines, but a lot of the younger men and even the men that are later on in life today are struggling with this overload, this overstimulation of just the accessibility and the overabundance. 165 million hours accessible for free.
You couldn't watch all of it if you wanted to.
You couldn't sit there for the rest of your life and consume all of it. So it's a new modern drug that's going to need new modern approaches that are rooted in real science, scripture, behavioral, with things that they didn't have in 1934.
Well, it's a super stimulus because it's a drug that there's no limit to it. Like, and so you can continue it. There's no, like, you don't get more hungover. Like, I mean, you do, but you don't, there's never a point where you have so much of it that you die. And so, and there's constant novelty. You can always find something. And that's the thing that people get into is there's always something that's going to, and so that's why you see people get into stuff. They're like, I never would have thought I would ever look at this, but it's because you need more and more to continue the addiction to go just like any other.
The way that a substance addiction works, it works with volume, right? And so you build a tolerance with alcohol, drugs, where you notice you need a little bit more the next time. With a sexual addiction, is pornography specifically, the tolerance is built and combated with variety.
Yeah.
Right. And so you start out with one type of pornography, all of a sudden you end up on corners of the internet that you never thought that you'd be in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of that dynamic. Like, you need a different, deeper, more taboo variety in order to get that dopamine hit that you got initially from just vanilla porn.
Yeah. So I would say this. I think early on in church, our answer to pornography was similar to other things.
Yeah.
In the side of, and none of these things are bad, but the idea of put up, like I remember when XXX Church first came out with their stuff on it, there was accountability software.
Yeah.
If you guys don't know what it is, basically you put some emails in there. If you went to the wrong site, it emailed those people.
Yeah.
And it used to run in the background. You couldn't find it. I had a friend literally put it on all of his dorm room people's computers and told them, I put your parents' email addresses in there because he was tired of walking around and seeing porn. Awful idea. But anyway, but what we would say is put up a bunch of boundaries, get accountability, and pray a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where, not that those are bad things, but where does that miss?
Yeah, well, I think human nature is when you're told you can't have something, there's going to be this desire to want it more. And I think, scripture will tell you that in, the story of Genesis, right? Here's the garden, here's everything you can have. That one tree over there, that fruit, you can't have it. What immediately happens is when God walks away, boom, we're right over there. So I think those things can become tools, but when they become your main source of trying to create freedom, it's kind of speaking to that chain on this side. It's like, I'm now chained that I can't have this thing. And you're avoiding whatever it is, that pain, guilt, shame, anxiety, stress that is actually causing you to want that thing. So I think use it, but if that's what you're relying on in terms of speaking just to the accountability blocker, it's like you're going to desire that thing more because you've told yourself, I can't have it. It's like when you go on a super strict diet, I can't have the ice cream, but it's sitting in the freezer. What do you find yourself doing? Waking in the middle of the night, walking downstairs, standing over the freezer with an entire thing, and you look at it, it's completely gone. It's just understanding that human nature is going to want the thing that you say you can't have.
Well, and let me just add to that. You'll find ways around it.
Yeah.
I literally had a student learn code, and he went in and would change the code on the XXX Church stuff so that it wouldn't send me the stuff. And like, I remember him coming to me and going, I did this. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's like, but that's what it does. It gives you reasons to go around.
Well, that's tapping into
versus,
like a whole different dopamine pathway now, because now you're becoming solution focused on trying to work around it. So you're getting actually
the fact that rush. It's not something you should have. There's the rush from that, like doing something outside of boundaries, doing something. And so, but
as far as like spiritual practices to solve this problem, right? Because that's the same thing that I heard, right? Like, you need to pray more. If you fill your heart with Jesus more, like, the more that you fill it up, the more the bad stuff's going to go out. And it's like, I pursued that relentlessly of piling on more Bible studies, more prayer time, like more church time. Now I'm serving in church. Now I'm going on mission trips. And it's like, I would be at a spiritual high on a mission trip in Honduras, building houses. Like, I just led a devotional for our group, and then I'd go back and I'd watch porn. And it's like, how does this happen? One of the things that we also see is like this term spiritual bypass, right? And so this term is, we're trying to put spiritual practices and solutions on something that is really deeply rooted in psychology, has spiritual consequences, but this is a psychology problem. And we're using that to do these things to bypass the really hard work that we need to do, right? And that really hard work is not just spiritual practices. And we see this echoed in scripture of diving into the darkness and really sitting with the pain and the darkness that you're in and staring at it head on and moving into it. And that's where the solution is found, right? It's a lot easier to say prayers, go to church more, do more Bible studies. It's really, really difficult to stare your problem in the face, get curious about why it's happening, dive into childhood, identify all of these traumas and things that you've suppressed and like put in the basement of your mind, and start to unpack those things. And so there's this symptom of going like, hey, let me just pray more and give some light spiritual answers. I'll just read, daily Bible verse of like you actually have a couple months of some like really, really deep rooted work. This is probably going to be the most painful thing that you've ever done in your life. But like, we see God do that. Like, could he have taken the Israelites, right, that were praying and just teleported them to the promised land? Could have. But what he decided to do is have them go on a journey through the Red Sea, through the wilderness, like all of this stuff. And so like it's a path of facing some really hard things. It's not something that's just, I'm going to say this magic verse and it's magically going to go away. Right. But what's cool is like there's so much development along that path. Like you want to find out who you really are, step on that journey, face the dark stuff, go back to all these traumas that you've been burdened with, right? Those start peeling back the layers. Now you start to really realize who you are. And like you and I, like you find your purpose and your calling along that path.
Yeah. I like what you said earlier is just even leaning into that. Sounds like a reframing. We talked a moment about, the old way of doing it plus the new way of doing it. Yeah. And because I'm such a Bible nerd and Bible geek, I think there's only one way of doing it. It is, and the church hasn't always got it right. And I think the church had good intentions, but I grew up in that same church. It's like, hey, just pray a little more, just pray more, just read more. And I get it. Yeah. But I do wish we had people to go, okay, here's what this looks like. This is not just about new practices. Yeah. This is about reframing the way you think. Yeah. Oh, because earlier you talked about identity. I'm not an addict. So I'm not going to identify myself with the problem. But I do have a problem. Yeah. 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 So it starts with identity and then confession and community and then boundaries and accountability. Like all of these are part of that process, and it's not easy. And we want promise without process. Yeah. Right. We want to say, man, I prayed and I gave it over to Jesus and I should be fine.
So it's the separation of salvation and sanctification, right? Like sanctification is painful. And Paul gave us a key of what does that look like? Well, do not conform to the pattern of this world, right? So stop conforming to the pattern of pornography over and over and over. Be transformed by renewing your mind. But what does that word renewing mean? It's actually the root word is more like a renovation of a home, right? And like we just went through renovation. We got hit by the hurricane, and there's a bunch of stuff. So fun, right? Especially
brings you together in a relationship, right?
And there's a lot of turmoil that happens that strengthens a marriage if it doesn't break, right? But like if we would have done that renovation without taking out the mold and the stuff that developed, right? Yeah. So a renovation is two parts. A lot of people jump to the construction phase. They want to add on more stuff. But the first thing we got to do is demolition. Yeah. What's the stuff inside of your head? What are the belief systems that the enemy has woven throughout the fibers of your life since childhood that we need to address and demolish before we start constructing these things on that new foundation?
Yeah. But there was a foundation that stayed in place, and that's where the identity of an addict can be like, I'm completely broken, every part about me is bad. It's like, no, there's some bad parts that we have to let go. But that foundation, who God made you to be, that is strong. Let's get rid of the bad. Let's rebuild, recreate this new on top of that original foundation.
So exactly what you're saying, be transformed by renewing your mind. Transformed actually means to return back to what always was. So we're peeling back all this stuff to get back to what God created. That's exactly right.
And I think that's the thing. If we are unwilling to look and find either the trauma, the pain, the hurt, we won't understand where the lies are coming from. And all of us are living in a certain amount of lies in our life from sin. And we can't always figure them out, or we don't know where they come. They come in randomly. They usually come in when we're having fights with people, or when somebody hurts us, or we feel embarrassed, or whatever that may be. They come out, especially in men. But if we don't get back to the place where they started, we're never going to heal from it. And so that's the hard work that you're talking about. But that's in many ways. And one of the things that we always tell parents is, man, if you won't heal from that, you'll pass it down. And that's, and I'll say this especially with pornography, men, if you won't heal from it, you will pass it down, because you're not going to be able to have the conversations with your sons, and even with your daughters, your women, because now we're seeing it affect women in a high way. You're not going to be able to have these conversations. You're not going to be able to walk through these things if you are not have the ability to heal from it yourself.
The only environment that you cannot heal from that is by yourself. The other environment that might be a little bit controversial that I bought into for a really long time was, I'm going to heal from it with just me and God. We got this. I'm going to pray about it. Like, I'm going to talk to God. I'm going to read my Bible, me and God. But the word says that we need to pray for one another so that we may be healed. It doesn't confess our sins to one another, pray for one another so that we may be healed. Not confess my sins to God, pray with God and I'll be here. Like he's constantly pushing us to one another, right? So you're talking about these blind spots that we can't really spot or figure out ourselves. No, but a group of brothers around you that are all fighting the same battle. That's the environment where healing happens, right? And so isolation and seclusion is where this thrives. And like anybody listening, you might be in a place right now where you're in isolation, seclusion. Nobody knows about this. This is convicting you at a deep level. The only environment that this is going to improve in and you're going to heal from it in is in an environment with God, but also with other men that are on the same journey.
Right. Well, and I would say this too. When you heal from something, you can see it in somebody else.
You can.
And so you need other people that have healed so they can go, no, I'm seeing this lie.
Yeah.
I see that you think you're fooling everybody. You're not. You're not.
Yeah.
I'm looking right into your soul right now and I see what's going on. And that's one of the great things, I think, what you guys are doing, but it's one of the great things God calls us to is he never wastes our pain. And so he's going to use it to help people walk forward in it. But I do want to step into, just for a second here, especially with kids. Because like I said before, average age 8 to 11, they have more availability to it than ever before. How do we start these conversations? And what are some things that you've seen parents do that help with this process more than definitely hurt it?
Yeah, I think, well, there's going to be age appropriate conversations that I think every home is going to need to interpret and analyze and come upon agreements with how they're going to have it with their kids. But I think some general points is you can't brush it under the pillow or like behind the curtain. Like it's got to be confronted head on. I had an incredible gentleman on my podcast years ago. Chris McKenna runs Protect Young Eyes, and his entire organization is dedicated to equipping parents and organizations with tools to have these conversations with children. And one of the things that he said that really has stuck with me since that conversation happened in 2001 or 2021 was make porn the most common word in your home. And what he meant by that is your children, once age appropriate, should know what it is, what is porn based upon your family's definition, what it isn't, right? So there's a difference between some of the content you're going to consume that may be explicit, but maybe not pornographic. And then who do they go to when they see it? Because I've said this thousands of times now, there's going to come a time in every young child's life where their brain sees something that their eye sees something that their brain is not equipped to handle. And our stories were all rooted in guilt and shame when we saw that. If they don't know where they're going to go when they see it, it's going to cause that same relationship with them. And I think 95% of men's first sexual experience is pornographic and it's rooted in shame because they don't have a person to go to. So what is porn? What isn't it? And who do I go to when I see it? Now you've created an environment that when that happens, that kid at least feels safe and entrusted. Oh, my dad's already talking about this. Like, let me go talk to him because I know he's got my back. Like I felt a little unsure about what this was, but my dad's on my side. He's already prepared me for this.
And I'll give you just an example in that. At the age of 6, we started with our oldest of, hey, here's the deal, man. You may see something where there's people that are naked. I'm like, I know that's gross. That's disgusting. Like, I know you think it's the worst thing in the world. But here's the deal. If you see that, I want you to know you are not in trouble. You are not in trouble at all. But man, if you come and let me know, I want to know. In fact, I'll give you a big hug. We'll talk about it, but I want to make sure that doesn't come up in front of you again. Like that's where it is at 6. Now at 11, it changes. We're talking more through it. But and we're having a little bit more conversations of what these things are. But it's parents, please hear me on this. You've got to start talking to your kids about porn and sex at a younger age. You have to do it because if not, the world will educate them on it. And you want you to be the main person they go to, especially when they're younger. Like that's who they should be going to, not their friends. And so start the conversation, make it a normality, because if you don't, I've seen it go the wrong way so often. I talked about sex and pornography at United last year. And I had guys coming up to me going, I started looking at it when I was 5 or 6 years old. And it wasn't until I was in high school that we actually talked about it. Like people even told me that there was a possibility out. And so, look, I'm not saying that it will be. Well, let me change this way. Porn will find your kid. It will. It's one of the few things that is looking for your. Like it will
well
hunt
stated.
you down on social media. It'll hunt you down on stuff. They will. You just, it's in movies, like it's sooner or later,
Yeah.
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so understand that, like, don't pray that it won't, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
How is your kid going to respond? And do you know how your kid's going to respond? Because have you had that discussion?
Yeah, it is a weapon of the enemy. And I think one more
Absolutely.
piece, maybe this leans more towards parenting of younger girls, but body parts, like call them what they are. Like it's not a
Anatomically
hoo-hoo
correct.
or a ha-ha. It's like,
Yeah.
because now you're creating guilt and shame around
Right.
the
Right.
anatomy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's
That's
very
good.
important to understand, like, this is the human body. Like
Yeah.
God made yours just like he made everybody
That's good.
else's. It doesn't have a special name. Just like your arm is an arm,
Mhm.
your is a
Yeah,
and had that
we're
conversation.
not saying it
at
right
home.
now because we're trying to do our best to.
Yeah.
I told the guys before we have families that watch this together, and so we're trying to do our best not to become quote unquote explicit, but have the conversation around it. But because there's so many things with girls sharing photos, all these kind of things. Like there's so many things out there that kids can step into. The guilt and shame is going to be there.
Yeah.
And you've worked with people. I've worked with people that are married that are still carrying guilt and shame from their childhood.
Yeah.
And it's like they're married and they're having sex, but they feel guilt and shame around it.
Yeah.
And you're like, how in the world is this happening? Like you're actually doing this God's way. It's because there's such a deep rooted deal there that if we don't step into it, it's going to hurt. What?
Yeah,
Mason,
for parents. If we're talking to parents, and you want to be able to have the conversation about porn, but you should set the table where you can have difficult conversations.
Yes.
Like this shouldn't be the first hard conversation that you're having.
Yeah.
So you arrange your table time or whatever that time is, before you go to bed or when they're praying at night. Start having hard conversations. That was one thing that me and Tracy did. Like, we're going to have hard conversations early. We're talking about everything from whether it's sex or race or discrimination or money or whatever that is, so that we build within our relationship. When hard things come up, we come to the table. We can talk about it. We're not ashamed of it, because that will mess up everything. Me, I remember the first thing I saw when I was 11, and my dad was very different, hardcore. I saw it when I was 11. I went and told my brother, and my brother was like, if you tell anybody, Dad's gonna kill us.
Yeah.
And so I never looked at anything again until I was 23. Because but it was out of fear. It wasn't out of, it wasn't because we had a good talk. It was like, nah, my dad would kill me. Like I know. So that friend, that neighbor, I never went in their house again. Because I was like, I don't ever even want to be around it, because I'm so scared of my dad and what he might do if he found out that I was in there. But that's also not healthy.
But think if that house was in your pocket and was following you everywhere you went, and in between a video popped up in an ad, like, like
so much more difficult, because it's not even, it's not even.
Well, and I would say your response is not the normal response. Because what ends up happening is that guilt and shame leads into a cycle that for some reason that leads them back, because there's still that side of I want to see it. And so where it pushed you there, like it's like, no, most of the times kids end up wanting to see it again, and they'll look for it, even though it causes guilt and shame. They know it's wrong, but there's that something inside their brain that they don't understand yet that's causing them to go into it.
And for me, it was, man, I won't look at that, but I'll do this. I won't look at that, but I'll. So it was still a problem, and still something that when I was 23, 24 years old, you go, oh, this is where this came from. This thing still lives in me, even though I'm 13 years removed from it. It's there. So go ahead.
Yeah. So like, it's interesting when we would ask this question kind of early on when I was getting into this work, I would think about exactly what we've talked about so far. Like, how do we have this conversation specifically about porn? Like bringing it up with our kids, making sure that there's not shame around it. And the way that I look at it now, like if we could zoom out from a 30,000 foot view, is imagine that the 11-year-old in the closet that found that magazine, his thought of who his dad was and how he showed up in his life in all of the other areas was, I got to talk to my dad. Right. And so, yes, let's have all these conversations. But like, as a father, let's ask ourselves the question, like, how are we showing up in literally every other area of our kids' life to show them that we're approachable, right? To show them that we're not perfect, which I think the amazing thing that I have as a gift now that I view is I can share my story with my son. I can say, dude, like that had me. I didn't have that for a long time. It had me. And this is how I struggled, right? But then are you showing up as that loving, caring, approachable. Like you're not throwing shame in any other areas. You're not getting angry about things that are small, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you approachable?
Yeah. And are you honest that you're fallible? That's
and that's the biggest
and that's what
thing.
they're finding. Actually, I saw this study recently that said one of the biggest determining factors in a kid continuing in church is whether or not their parents actually admitted they were wrong. I'm like, that's a crazy thought.
Yeah.
But if we see God in the same way we see our parents, then it's like it's that idea of, well, I mean, God is perfect, but that idea of like, well, my parents never messed up, and therefore there's this high standard. If I don't meet it, then I'm forever going to be labeled as this. Whereas God goes, no, there's this high standard, but I love you so much that at any moment you can come back to me. And that's the thing. Parents, we're United is going to be putting something together. I'll let you guys know that, like 6th through 12th grade and that. But I would say putting boundaries on stuff right now is one of your main things. Everything my kid has stuff on it. Our Wi-Fi has a thing on it that basically keeps all of it. And I tell them that. I don't think it's good to put something on your kid's deal and then catch them in it. I tell my son, I see everything that's going to be on there. I want you to know that right off the bat. There's blockers, but if somehow you go past it, I know every keyword you type in, all that kind of stuff. And it's not because I don't love you, I don't trust you. It's because I want to protect you. Like there's some serious stuff.
It's also God's design for freedom, right? So like we see in Genesis, he put Adam in the Garden of Eden, which means an enclosure of pleasure and delight. Like the pleasure and delight can exist within the closure, right? And so these boundaries create an environment where freedom is possible. Freedom is not, I can do anything that I want anytime with anybody for any reason.
Right.
No,
that actually leads to a prison.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And so, there's covenant eyes. There's a bunch of others. But I would say this, parents, whatever you think is the age to give your kids a cell phone, wait longer.
Yes.
And then whatever you give them, don't feel bad about locking it down. Oh, they're going to get made fun of. Who cares? I'd rather them get made fun of than to hurt themselves.
And there's nothing wrong with getting them a flip phone.
Absolutely.
He's 14. Get him a flip phone. Who's he calling?
That's right.
Can I rapid fire some questions?
Yeah.
Just I know we're about to wrap up here in a second, but I want to rapid fire some questions and just want to hear you guys respond to these because these are some questions that people have. Is watching porn really a sin if I'm not hurting anyone?
You're hurting yourself. Is that somebody? Right. The other thing, and I won't unpack this too much, but we look at the contraption that the enemy's created of darkness to suck people in. If you're a consumer, you're a demand creator, and you're contributing to that as well, right? So it's like, what part do we play in darkness? And then are you hurting yourself? Are you lessening your ability to be the husband, father, and leader that God created you to be? Are you lessening your ability to live out the calling that he put you on this planet for? And anytime he calls us to something, he's calling other people at the same time, right? To follow in whatever way, shape, or form. So you're literally diminishing your ability to carry out that calling. So who are you hurting? It could be millions of people.
Well, Matthew 5:28, Jesus, if you look at a woman with lust, you've already committed adultery in your heart. So,
bro, that
covers it.
Well,
and it's the same thing of like I've heard people say, "Well, what if we watch it together?" No, it's not a marital aid. It actually, all this research says you actually find your spouse less attractive every time you watch porn.
Well, let's take the purpose that God created sexual intimacy inside of a marriage and let's completely tarnish it with just pure pleasure. Right.
And bring other people in.
When it doesn't make sense. When you really think about it.
My mentor said, if it's not pulling you close to holiness, it's pulling you close to hell.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like that's it. All right, here's another one. I prayed, I've cried, I've fasted. Why am I still struggling?
I think we did a great job speaking to that earlier. There's a core root issue that needs some addressing. And if you're doing that with just you and God, you're missing a major part of this, which is the community and the connection that needs to be created through this.
This is a psychological problem that has spiritual consequences. This isn't a spiritual problem, right? So it needs to be addressed from a psychology standpoint as well.
I won't ask that one. How do I bounce back after I've failed again and again?
I just did a podcast on this last week. I mean, there's so many steps to take, but I think the first one is who's the person that's walking it out, with you, right? So going to that person immediately and confessing of the sin out of the gate, I think from a psychology standpoint is getting a win on your belt as quick as possible. However you define a win, but I think the win is going to be a rebuilding of the confidence and belief. It can be something as simple as getting a hard workout in, finishing a hard project, a task, something that's going to give you smaller hits of healthy dopamine. So this tapping a little bit more into the neuroscience aspect of it. But I think the bounce back to confession and then getting yourself back into victory, so you begin to feel like a victor as opposed to a victim in the situation.
My answer to that would be get a long-term plan. One of the things that we've actually found is guys get addicted to confession because there's a dopamine hit. I failed, I confess, I get a dopamine hit. Next time my brain goes, I failed. If I confess again, people are going to pat me on the back. Go, good job, man, for being honest. I get a dopamine hit. Now you're stuck in that cycle, right? So you've replaced one addiction with another addiction.
I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So it's like confession is important, right? But the true form of confession is like churning back to a different direction, right? Yeah. So that's where the long-term healing plan comes in. And this isn't just something that's going to happen overnight. This is a long-term deal. So you got to get off of that cycle of, I wrote a ebook called Confession Cancer, right? And it's this dynamic of being addicted to that cycle, right? We see this in recovery groups a lot, but the long-term plan is the solution.
Right. And it's the idea of like, don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. That's insanity. So what is it that needs to change?
Yeah.
All right, last one. How do I know if I have a problem or I'm just tempted?
Have you ever been able to permanently quit?
Yeah. Asked and answered.
All right. I got one last one then. As a wife, husband struggles with porn. And we're going to give a resource of somebody that works directly with those people.
And let's also, women struggle with porn too.
They do too.
Yeah.
So they do too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we have resources for men, for women, and for spouse. So we're going to, those are going to be all at the bottom. How should a wife respond if a husband admits to porn addiction?
Yeah. So we have porn addiction. We also have affairs that are very common inside of that realm, right? So number one, like there needs to be healthy boundaries set for her, right? And protection of herself and her family. The other thing is not, I think helping the wife try to understand that it has nothing to do with her and everything to do with him. Right. Yeah. One of the things that like our women's program, we work women through is that have been betrayed is like, these thoughts and these beliefs that you're less than, or like you're the reason that you pushed him here, you're not attractive, or all the, like it has nothing to do, everything to do with him. And it's like encouraging him to go get help in a group of men. Yeah. One thing we caution wives of is like, you should not be his accountability partner. No. You can pray for your husband. You can encourage him to go help. He needs to be surrounded by a group of men that are warriors fighting the same battle. Yeah. He needs to heal in that environment. He does not need to confess to you every single time he's doing something that's going to create more damage on the healing journey.
Yeah. Don't be the one that's going to fix him. Allow him to fix himself, because soon that relationship is going to become of a mother and son type of thing. Like, I'm here to fix this boy, and you're going to lose respect, connection, desire for him, because now he's a little boy that you're trying to fix and not the man that's supposed to be leading you.
Can I cap this just by saying that, again, like, God allows you to go through pain to lead you through your purpose. And so some of the most beautiful marriages that I've ever seen in my life are the ones that have been through hell and back, right? And so when you're in a place of like desperation and hopelessness, know that God has a bigger plan, and like it's not the end of your story. He's still got more pages to write.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing, is going, he's not doing this because of me.
Yes.
And that's always because that's the immediate thought. And but at the same time, and men understand, like, what you just dropped on your wife is a bomb.
It is.
Yeah. And so she is allowed to feel what she is feeling in that moment. Yeah. But we want to make sure that you guys are resourced and helped out in that. Guys, we covered a small portion of this entire dynamic, but that's the reason why we were wanting to resource you guys. These guys have so much content, so many things that are out there that can help you in these conversations and all of this kind of stuff. So we really, really hope that you dive in. We don't want to leave you stranded in this conversation as you take next steps. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Mason. Thank you, Frank, for being on here. Daryl, you're always here, so we love you too. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope this starts some great discussions. And I hope really, especially in families, as discussion with your kids and taking those next steps forward. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next week.